The Wellington waterfront, the Monaco of the South Pacific, and once again this Labour weekend the harbour capital becomes the focus of the nation for the 1988 Nissan Mobil 500. A gruelling 4-hour Group A touring car classic around this tortuous 3.2 kilometre circuit, especially constructed for the 5th running of what has become the country's premier motorsport occasion. Well, good afternoon everybody, and welcome to the first of 2 practice days here on the Wellington waterfront for the big race, which starts at 1:15 on Monday afternoon. At this stage there are 27 entrants for the 1988 Nissan Mobil 500, and that comprises 6 Ford Sierras, 7 Holden Commodore VLs, there are 8 BMWs, including 6 of the old-style 635 CSI BMWs. There's 4 Toyota Corolla GTs to contest the up to 1600cc Division 3, and completing the field are a Toyota Supra and a Ford Mustang GT, whom quite frankly we don't expect to be too competitive during the big race on Monday afternoon. Well, let's now take a look at the circuit. 3.2 kilometres once around here on the Wellington waterfront. They start on the home straight near the pits area, and after the hairpin it's off the wharf onto Jervois Quay for the longest straightaways of the circuit, only broken by a small chicane. Then comes a tough left-hander outside the Michael Fowler Centre into Cable Street, down to another tight left-hander, then a 90-degree right-hander up to the hairpin at the Overseas Terminal before the circuit winds back over the wharves and over the bridge back to the start-finish line. Last year, the winners Klaus Niedzwitz and Klaus Ludwig in the Texaco Eggenberger Sierras completed 150 laps in the 4 hours. That's approximately 480 kilometres. With them on the same lap last year, with the BMW M3 combination, the team that won the 1987 World Touring Car Championship, the only World Touring Car Championship. They're back this year, Roberto Ravaglia and Emanuele Pirro, and also completing 150 laps last year, the second Eggenberger Sierra combination of Steve Soper and Pierre Dieudonné. Those two are back this year. They're not in the Eggenberger Sierras because that team has not entered Wellington in 1988. But there are plenty of Sierras here. It's expected that a Ford Sierra or a BMW M3 is going to win this race. Let's check the 27 starters confirmed at the moment, and here's Tony Palmer.
Thanks, Peter. This is no particular seeding order, just numerically. Percy and Balkett in the Commodore, McLeod and Glenn Clark in car number 3, the Commodore, Bond and Jones, former world champion Alan Jones in the Sierra. Car number 6 is Miedeke, Soper and Bagnall. You'll see where there are 3 names there. Those are cross entries, so you can hop in another car if it doesn't work. Car 7, McIntyre and Hyde in the 635, a little outdated. 8 is Bagnall, Dieudonné and Miedeke, another cross entry there. 10, Perkins and Hull in the Commodore, the latest model developed by Perkins. Johnson and Bow in the Ford Sierra in car 17. In 20, Wallace and Allam. Wallace not that well known here, but the winner this year of Le Mans. Simonson, Gramberg and Tulloch in the Sierra 21. That's actually a 3-driver entry. 22, Billington and McKellar in the Commodore VL. 28, Torkler and Schoen, a young pairing from Auckland. In 33, Sealing, McLachlan and Golson in the Supra. Had a little trouble with scrutineering yesterday. Hope they'll be able to start. 34 is Lamont and Brett Riley. 43, Barrow and Fleming in the Mustang. 44, Gillies, McKellar and Samaria in the 635 CSI. 45, Francevic and Armin Hana, one of the favourites in the Sierra. 52, Ravaglia and Emanuele Pirro. Ravaglia being the world champion at the moment in the M3. They're the big threat to the Sierras. 53 is Thatcher, Crow, Scott in the M3. 54, Sorensen, Scott and Crow, another cross entry. Radicic, Bryce Finau in the M3. Peter Brock and Jim Richards in the M3. Crompton and Tony Nosker, that's Neil Crompton of Channel 7, and Tony Nosker in the M3. 71 is getting into the small cars in Class 3. Slater and Heffen in the Corolla. Willie and McGregor in the Corolla. Bate and Marr, and then Drinkrow and Drinkrow, all in Corollas.
Here's the activity in the pit lane. The cars at the moment have had one unofficial and untimed practice session which lasted for 90 minutes. They're due back on the track again in approximately 10 or 15 minutes from now for another 90-minute untimed and unofficial practice session. There is Tricky Dicky Dick Johnson, the favourite at the moment. He drives the world's fastest touring car, number 17. It's the red Shell Ultra Ford Sierra Cosworth RS 500. That's Dick Johnson of Australia. We're going to be seeing plenty of this man, we think, over the next 3 days. Well, now let's go back to Tony Palmer. He's talking with some of the drivers about their impressions of the circuit. And first up, in fact, Dick Johnson.
What is it about the circuit that you like?
Well, it's very, very demanding on a driver to be able to keep his act together around here for such a period of time. You cannot afford to make one single mistake, otherwise you pay for it in the way of body panels or whatever, which can put you out of the event very, very quickly.
It looks very interesting. It's got a lot of character as a road circuit, and I'm looking forward to it.
I think it's going to be a great circuit. It's got a bit of everything, tight corners and quick corners and a few bumps here and there, and apparently a bit of the your braking's dictated more by the bumps than the actual distance. So I'm looking forward to it.
And you have to be so precise not to get into the Armco, but you've got to be only an inch away from it, otherwise you're not really trying. And it's good.
Yes, I like very much this circuit.
Why?
Because I think it's normally like the circuit like this one, Monte Carlo, the circuit in the town. Very bumpy, a little bit difficult and dangerous to drive, and for this I like very much.
It's a road circuit. It's got a lot of buildings around it, which makes it pretty interesting anyway. There's a lot of Armco, there's a lot of barriers, and there's no runoffs. And I suppose that makes it more difficult, and from a racing driver's point of view, probably makes it more appealing.
Well, I think it's one of the most demanding circuits I've ever been on. You know, there's no room for mistake. You make an area and you're in the wall, and it's you know, it's a very difficult circuit to drive fast. It's a difficult circuit to get the car to the end. So yes, you know, it's a challenge, and I love them.
What kind of a race is going to win here?
A good, steady, consistent race. There's going to be no heroics by putting it into the Armco or going flat out and setting lap records, then putting it into the Armco. Just good, consistent racing.
Criteria is going to be, you know, you have to be careful, keep away from those cement walls and what have you, but look after the car as much as you can because of the bumps. I think that's going to play its toll on the cars.
Not necessarily the guy that leads the first 10 laps.
Oh, it's always the same thing in long distance races. It's going to be the car that stays out the pits the most and is the most reliable car.
The circuit is not so bad for BMW because it's very bumpy, and you need to finish the race without problem, and I think in this moment the BMW is very good for this race.
They tell me you haven't driven touring cars.
Well, this is true, but I can't really see too many problems about that, especially with a teacher like Jeff driving with me.
How much advice have you had from various people?
Lots, but I'm not going to take any notice of any of it, because I think they're trying to send me down the wrong path.
I got some good advice this morning from Larry. Larry's informed it was a saloon car. It's got 4 doors, and they need to be shut before he actually goes out onto the track.
How familiar are you with the Commodore?
Well, I've seen him on the streets.
He's sat in one now.
I've sat in one just now. It fits really great, so I'm looking forward to it.
You can reach the pedals?
Yeah, I can reach the pedals, the steering wheel, and the heater controls.
Well, it might take more than just controlling the heating controls to beat this man. Andy Wallace, a very famous name, one of many famous names in the race this year. Andy Wallace, the winner of Le Mans, the 24-hour race in one of the Tom Walkinshaw Jaguars. Also in the race, 2 former World Formula One champions, namely Denny Hulme and Alan Jones of Australia, and the World Touring Car Champion Roberto Ravaglia of Italy. And in fact, he's going to remain the World Touring Car Champion for quite a while, because there's not going to be another World Touring Car Championship or an Asian Pacific Touring Car Championship or a European Touring Car Championship, it seems, for quite some time. The people in Paris who run international motorsport are not too keen, it seems, on international touring car championships. We'll talk more about that in just a moment or two, but the Nissan Mobil 500 is just the focal point of a big weekend in Wellington. They're calling it the Streets Ahead 88 Wellington Carnival, and Graham Booth reports on some of the fine activities which have been going on over the last couple of days and which will happen in the days to come.
Wellington has been coming alive this week as the Streets Ahead promotion gets into full swing. With its street parades and other attractions, it's designed to build on the attraction of the motor race and give the city a festive air. One of the highlights has been a jazz and blues festival, which has attracted international artists.
Awaits the kiss of May. So in a world of snow, where seasons come and go, where what you think you know, you can't be certain of. The wind in your heart, the wind
charity ball, which raised money for the city's Life Flight helicopter rescue service, was extremely well patronised.
This is Wellington. This is culture south of the Bombay Hills. It's wonderful. And none of us had to pay to get in.
Absolutely wonderful. And, I mean, it's just the beginning of a great weekend, isn't it?
And as far as motorsport is concerned, are you a lifelong fan? I believe, in fact, you live near Pukekohe.
I do. In fact, I can hear the cars going around the circuit. It sounds like a very large swarm of bees. But certainly for me, when I lived in England, I used to go to Brands Hatch. And, of course, then living in Australia, Adelaide was the big, exciting event. And so, you know, let's hope Wellington becomes the next Adelaide. It'd be wonderful.
Wellington has been taking a leaf out of Adelaide's books. That city runs a Formula One Grand Prix through its streets, and that attracts thousands of visitors, many with very full wallets. Adelaide lures them with some imaginative advertising.
There's action, action in the air. There's action, action in the air. Listen, you race fans out there, we're set to go, you hear, we're gonna have the party on here. Yeah, you crave some action, well pack your gear, you gotta catch the show, you gotta make sure you're here.
The Nissan Mobil brings many thousands of visitors to the capital, bringing a bonanza to the city's hotels. But it goes further than just accommodation. All sorts of businesses benefit from the race, and the city's public relations director, Richard Mason, certainly isn't complaining.
We estimate, based on last year's figures, that this is the largest single revenue earner of any event in New Zealand on a regular basis.
Do you see it becoming more important?
Oh, yes. We've expanded from things that were centred on the motor race, the 3 days of the motor race in previous years, and now we have widened that to be a citywide carnival. This year we have the Skyhawk display, we have a major fun run, we have a major street parade, we have a big ball, we have pop concerts running throughout, we have a museum display of cars. There's a whole range of associated activities using the motor race as a central theme. And next year we hope to be into a great big Mardi Gras, and we've got a whole lot of additional ideas.
In dollar terms, what do you reckon it's worth to Wellington?
Well, based on last year's figures, somewheres between about $14 and $20 million for 6 days.
That's why you're smiling.
That's why I'm smiling.
4 years ago, when the event started, many retailers weren't convinced it'd be worth opening their shops for. But those that did had their cash registers ringing. This year, 89 shops, including the giant BNZ Centre, are open. They have to go before a hearing to get special permission to open on Sunday and Labour Day. Merchants Association spokesman Michael Baines feels that this country will have to revise its laws so that shops can open on special occasions like this.
There's a number of events coming up in New Zealand in the not too distant future. The Commonwealth Games is only sort of 18, 19 months away, and we would hope that you know, the retailers in Auckland, if they wish to open, you know, get extended hours over that period, don't have to go through the same sort of hassles as Wellington has over the last couple of years.
So the Nissan Mobil is more than just a motor race. It's part of a week-long festival that brings millions into the capital city.
Yes, the harbour capital, it's a good place to be every Labour weekend. We'll have more from the Wellington waterfront very soon, including a look back to Bathurst 3 weeks ago, some classic crashes, and we'll also have more action as we count down to the big race on Monday, the Nissan Mobil 500.
As it's transformed from a port area to a racetrack. Giant marquees are put up for the trade displays and stands erected for the thousands of spectators. But it's on Friday night from 10 o'clock onwards that the real work begins.
Can I put them right up to 9 to come in here, or?
Traffic officers move in and seal off the streets. And in come the trucks carrying containers which help mark out the circuit. The forklift driver is Kerry Powell, one of the race organisers. Every year he leads the team, which makes the big change.
Well, it's a little bit easier than it has been in the past. We've got the same gang that's done it now for about 4 years, so it makes it a lot easier than the last few years. And it's not raining and it's not windy, so it's good.
You've had some pretty terrible conditions in the past few years, so you must be pretty pleased with tonight.
Well, it looked like it's going to be bad. We've had 3 weeks of wind, and the night that we wanted to be calm it is, so it's really good, yeah.
Sometimes things go bump in the night in the way Kerry doesn't quite expect. When a giant container meets a road sign, something's got to give, and it's not the container. Meanwhile, the team's putting up the Armco crash barriers.
up.
They should have closed that road an hour ago. Yeah, that's on the other road. They had to go the other way.
One of the biggest problems of the night is the cars, driven by members of the public, which somehow get through the cordon.
Don't forget the plates.
But by early on Saturday morning, the job's done. And the cost of all this? A cool $1 million.
So that's how the harbour capital becomes the Monaco of the South Pacific with this very tough and twisting Wellington street front circuit. Well, for some reason, the gentlemen who control motorsport around the world, namely FISA, which is based in Paris, don't seem to be too keen on the idea of touring cars making it big and taking away the money and the spectator appeal from Formula One. In 1987, the Nissan Mobil 500 was part of the very short-lived World Touring Car Championship. What it did, though, was bring to Wellington a world quality field. Let's take a look back 12 months to the 1987 Nissan Mobil 500.
Right in behind him. Alan Grice is the next one. Brock's made a good start. He's in behind Pirro. And also a great start there from Georgie Fury as they head on to the downtown course and onto the long back straight.
Let's pick up the Sierras and see what that gap now back to Pirro is. As the Sierras come down past the start-finish line, we'll put a clock on the gap from Steve Soper, looking back to third place. And it is widened. Steve Soper car, Soper Dudone. A little bit of a nudge with the Toyota Corolla there. The Corolla going straight ahead. And the Sierra turning left. We gather that Roberto Ravaglia is ready to get into the car, so that might be a sooner than expected pit stop for the 46 car. And meantime, one of the Volvos is a little off onto the fence.
That was incredible. That's the Ubix Copier's car. Oh, sorry about the guardrail. The pace car is out because
it's the same fella that hit the wall. Inky Tulloch, I think, was at the wheel at the time. He's got the smoky blues there right at the moment. It is the Sturmitz Moivesen car. Two women appear to be out of contention, but the story at the moment is that this car, the 46 car with Roberto Ravaglia at the wheel, is catching. He is 14 or 15 seconds behind Klaus Ludwig.
Here's another boy that's done very well today, Tony Longhurst, sharing the Bimmer with Alfred Hager. Tony, of course, runs with Jim Richards and the JPS BMW team in Australia. Came over basically to spectate. Oh, problems here. The number 6 Texaco having a lose.
We made it a 1:15 start, which makes a 5:15 finish. 4 hours or 500 Ks, whichever comes sooner. And the checkered flag is out now for Klaus Ludwig. Robbie Lester waves the checkered flag, and Klaus Ludwig has won the Nissan Mobil 500. In second place will be Roberto Ravaglia. This is Ravaglia in the 46 car, coming down to take the checkered flag in second place. In third place will be Steve Soper and Pierre Dudone. Soper driving at the moment after his little spin. Still back on target. They'll take third from Fury and Seaton.
Well, that's how it was 12 months ago here on the streets of the Wellington waterfront. Tony Palmer is with me now. And Tony, it was the World Touring Car Championship last year. FISA canned that. Then the promoters thought, well, why not an Asian Pacific Touring Car Championship? We hear this morning that FISA have canned that as well, along with the European Touring Car Championship. What the hell's going on? Don't they like these little cars?
There will be no series anymore. What's happened is, according to the FISA people that we've spoken to over in New Zealand at the moment, Marcel Sauvé, the scrutineer, and Marcel Martin, the FISA steward. And in conversation yesterday afternoon, their view was that FISA wanted to take a long, hard look because each country has its own regulations for Group A. So Group A in Germany is not the same as Group A in England or Australia or New Zealand. And they have yet to decide which of those is going to be the international formula. And they've decided that there should be a break until 1990 or 1991 until such time as they can decide which is the best formula to have universally. Now, having spoken to a number of international drivers since that time, they view that explanation with a great deal of scepticism and think that it might have a lot more to do with a certain fellow with financial interests in Formula One and Group C and one or two other things that are world championships that Group A may be detracting from. That, of course, is entirely speculation. The official version is that they've got to have a break to see which is the best formula.
But surely that official version must have some credence, because look what happened at Bathurst just a matter of 3 weeks ago, where Walkinshaw protested, 17 cars, 17 Ford Sierras? Now that is a ridiculous situation, isn't it? He protested every Ford Sierra except the car that won.
It is in a sense, depending on how you see it. I mean, if you look at it as payback for last year, when the Europeans came to Australia, the Australians didn't like the rules that they had run all year. And if you have a look, those Sierras that were disqualified from Bathurst had run the entire season leading up to Bathurst with the same spec. So, I mean, that's equally ridiculous until somebody challenges it or brings up the spec. I think what will come out of it, though, really, to look on the positive side, is that according to these same FISA people, you can now have a World Series or a World Challenge or a World anything you like, so long as it's not called a championship and so long as it's not called an official FISA championship. So in other words, promoters like we have here can organise a series or a challenge or call it what they will and run under the regulation that they have approved as a local regulation. And I think what will come out of it is that each national championship will perhaps get stronger, and New Zealand and Australia may have to opt to do what they've done in previous years with other formulas that have had their demise and continue with what they've wanted to run.
All right, Tony, thanks for that word of explanation. Well, as you can see now, the Group A cars are out for their second untimed, unofficial practice. There's the car that everybody's talking about, number 17, the red Shell Ultra Ford Sierra RS Cosworth 500, driven by Tricky Dickie Johnson, the Australian Touring Car Champion for 1988. Let's now join our commentary team as we take a look at some of these cars in unofficial practice. Up in the commentary box now, David Oxton, Lou McKinnon, and first, Brian Lawrence.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, this is the car that, as Peter said, everybody is predicting to take out line honours on Monday afternoon for the 5th running of the Nissan Mobil 500. However, there's many people that have had a good look around the circuit here, and they've weighed up what those BMW M3s are worth. And I think we're going to see some different results at the end of Monday afternoon. In particular, the BMWs, the way in which they're constructed, they're a lighter car, they're down on horsepower by comparison to the RS 500 Cosworth here of Johnson's. But also, in terms of being bulletproof, it enjoys a little more reliability. And I'm not saying that Johnson's cars are badly prepared, because they're not. They're beautifully done. Several New Zealanders on the team, headed by, of course, Auckland and Neil Lowe. And when you get 500 kilometres around a very demanding circuit like we have here in Wellington, I think it's a pretty open-dated race, but I certainly wouldn't rule out those BMWs. But David, you've done a few more laps around here. We'd like to listen to your thoughts.
Well, for sure, the little BM3, that's the Neil Compton entry. That's one of the Brock cars, and it's got some damage on the right front, so it would appear young Neil's been learning the hard way of getting around the Wellington Streets Alive promotion. Anyway, going back to these cars, these M3s are the one that's on your screen right now. There are 6 of them competing at this meeting. 2 of the Mobil cars for the Brock team. There's the 2 virtual European type cars, 1 of the Schnitzer team, and 1 in the rear of your picture now. It's probably car 52, the Manuel Perriot car with Vaglia, and of course our own Paul Radicic and Klaus from Australia in the similar Lockwood car. Finally, of course, the 2 little Cardinal cars. They're the ones that we pick, and one of these cars, I believe, will be the one that will take out the honours.
This particular car that we're looking at now, the Emmanuel Pirro, the Roberto Ravalia car, absolutely magnificent already today, recording a time in the 1 minute 30-second bracket. When we look at some of the times from last year's grid, even the Klaus Niedewitz car was doing 29.42s on its flying lap. So already we're seeing this car an absolutely sensational result in my opinion, and a time of 1 minute 30 is absolutely stunning in unofficial practice.
And we'll see more of these cars in the unofficial untimed practice very soon. In the meantime, we are joined now by Mike Raymond from Channel 7 in Sydney. Mike, a chance to review Bathurst of 3 weeks ago. A new name for Bathurst this year, the Tui's 1000. It became James Hardy's sponsorship coming to an end. Was it the beginning, do you think, of a new era for Bathurst with all the problems of the last 12 months?
I think it really was, Peter. Some of the problems that you and Tony have already gone through, that last year, of course, was Hardy's 20th year of sponsorship. Bathurst, the organising club, had been torn apart. Half of the club wanted to go international racing, and when you go international racing, you have major problems. The major problems usually are, it's great to have an international race in New Zealand or Australia, but when you get the organising authority, being FISA, to come out and organise your race, you can pull the chain, I'm telling you. And that's what the problem was with Bathurst. This year, they were able to get around that. It was there were protests, sure, but that was one-upsmanship. They got a great race out of Bathurst, and I think they'll get a great race out of here. If I can just throw my two bob in. And believe me,
Do you think an Australian's going to win at Wellington again?
No, I wouldn't even say that. I was just going to say, as far as FISA is concerned,
sure,
with the races in Australia and New Zealand, I think they'll go from strength to strength. The Australians love coming to Wellington. It's a different type of race. They all know that there's plenty of concrete and there's plenty of Armco barriers and there are no runoff areas. Before they come here, they know that. So there's no use grizzling if you hit a wall. And this race is unique. Australia's Bathurst race is unique because it's around a mountain. They think that's unsafe. Most of the Europeans that run 4th, 5th and 6th, incidentally, not the winners. The good drivers love it. So I think Group A racing's got a big future, really, in the South Pacific.
All right, Mike Raymond, thank you for those comments. Let's take a look now at some of the highlights from Bathurst 1987, 1988, 3 weeks ago. And even though it was a new sponsorship, it was a chance for the drivers to get plenty of kicks on Mount Panorama. The music of NXS, that's Kick, and a review of Bathurst 1988. Mike Raymond, Tony Longhurst and Thomas Mazzera, the winners there, but they're not in Wellington this year. Why not?
No, it's a pity really. I think they put together their sponsorship package, their driver deal, their team deal together very, very late and couldn't make it across here. And I've been talking to people here over the last day or so about the future of this race, and I'd really like to see the race go back to January and start the season, because it'll bring so many more drivers here. But last year, after the race here in Auckland, the guys tried to ship their cars back, and most of them got back on the morning of the Adelaide Grand Prix. So there's that slight problem, and some then have to go on to Japan. So
just a word about the man who got second at Bathurst this year, Dick Johnson. He finished up getting second, but it took him 3 cars to get into that second place. He's only got 1 car in Wellington, hasn't he, Mike? So how's he going to manage for 500k when it took him 3 to do 1,000 at Bathurst?
Gee, I hope he's picked the right one. Here he is now, Dick Johnson and John Bower sharing this weekend. They've got their best car here. They know what is needed to do well on the streets of Wellington. Johnson's always performed very well here. The point I think we make is the fact that these cars have very, very hard transmission. They're pumping out 500 brake horsepower, and it really gives the Shell Sierras a working over this course. I still lean a bit towards a Commodore or a BMW for this one.
Really? All right, Mike, thank you for those comments. Mike Raymond from Channel 7 in Sydney. More from Mike over the next couple of days. We'll take a break now and return very soon to the streets of Wellington. Coming up, the classic crashes, and also untimed practice continues. Is on Monday afternoon. Well, during the cricket season, many of you may have entered the Catch of the Match competition. That's where we ask you to put in order of merit some classic catches. Why not have a motorsport version and call it Classic Crashes, complete with Richie Benno.
Classic Crash A features the Vauxhall Viva number 58 from the race of 1967. Watch history being made here. Oh dear. Yes, see it again now. We're witnessing the birth of the trend of changing saloons into convertibles. Here we go. I bet the Viva looked smart when they fitted the vinyl roof. And who could forget Crash B when Dick Johnson totaled his Falcon while cutting a fire trail in 1981. Annoying not only his back manager and panel beater, but greenies all over the country. Let's see it again now. Yes, the conservation movement now rates this man as a greater threat to the environment than fluorocarbons. Oh dear, look at that Classic Crash C, Japanese driver Katayama, who came out here in 77 and came to an untimely end. The marshals were quickly on the spot though, even managed to get the bandages on without removing his helmet. Okay, so here it is again in slow motion, and he certainly made an impression on the race. With the track, the fence, the grass, and just about everything else. Katayama. Kevin Bartlett here, featuring in Crash D. Kevin's always given the punters great entertainment, and pointed out to the crowd quite quickly the same thing my father pointed out to me on entering puberty: never trust rubber. Quite a promotional coup for Kevin in this race, managing sponsorship not only from Channel 9 Sydney, but also Channel 6 in Hobart. Crash E, and it's Tom Walkingshaw, the man who won the race in a Jaguar in 1985, not faring nearly so well in 1984. In fact, he never got off the line. Yes, very sad. Never went an inch, not a centimetre, not a rod, pole or perch. Oof, dear. Right in the Triple M sponsorship, very painful. Johnny Goss, who owned the car, was speechless for almost 2 seconds. And finally, Crash F, and what an F crash it is too. Bill Brown from 1971, proving the value once and for all of seatbelts, helmets and dark-coloured racing overalls. Might add his Timex never stopped ticking. Classic crashes Atov. I'm sorry, I'll read that again. A to F. Put them in order of preference, subtract your driving glove size, and Bob's your Prime Minister. Good evening.
And first prize is 2 laps around Ruapuna in Tony Palmer's Mini going backwards. Let's now join Tony Palmer as the Group A cars are on the track in untimed practice. Let's join Tony with the commentary team.
Thanks, Peter, for all of that. We're looking now for the Graham Balcott Win Percy Commodore And I guess we've got one or two people here, including David Oxton, who've been Commodore fans in the past. There have been people here, David, brave enough to predict a Commodore win. I think you really would have to be brave, wouldn't you?
Well, let's be fair. The big grunters have done a few big wins down here, Tony, back in the days of Brock and Commodore. But this is the one that seems to be picking the pace up. That was the one that was nearest to the Rivagli BMW, the little Snitzer car earlier this afternoon. That's Win Percy driving the car now with Auckland to Graham Balkett. And Graham will really be looking forward to a power drive. But this Englishman's a super cool, professional touring car driver. And certainly he'll be looking to improve on the performance, which I guess a lot of people are disappointed about the way the Commodores went at Bathurst. But maybe this circuit will suit them because of their real big torque.
What do Win Percy and Trevor Crowe got in common?
Tell me.
They're both Skoda dealers. Win Percy also sells Jaguars. But at the moment he's sitting in the Commodore. And we spoke to him a little earlier in the day, Win Percy. Lovely fellow, comes from Tolpuddle in England and really does have an excellent sense of humour. Although he takes his racing very, very seriously, he can always find something to laugh about. Win Percy, the Tolpuddle Terror. Nice to see you back in this part of the world again. You obviously like this circuit.
I think most of the Group A drivers do anyway, to be honest. It's so different to what we're used to with set circuits. You can really enjoy something like this.
I know it's a rude question, but how are you going to make a Commodore competitive around here? Are you doing a rain dance?
Well, rain would be a pretty good leveller, it's true. I don't know, I still in my heart believe that at the end of 4 hours, the Commodore can still be competitive.
Do you think the fact that it is a big, heavy car will help it in terms of dings and knocks?
Well, any street circuit is pretty bumpy anyway, naturally, because of the type of use it gets. And the Commodore is heavy. I think you'll see the Sierra skid around a lot more. Hopefully, because of that extra weight, it'll be in our favour.
And this time in New Zealand, it's a bit of a family visit for you. You got your wife and daughter here as well.
Yeah, my daughter's here for 6 months working with horses up at Pukekohe, and it was an ideal opportunity for my wife to come and see the place and the race as well.
So they're going to have a closer look at what you do for a living.
Well, it's true. I can prove what I'm up to most of the time away from home.
Win Percy, lovely fellow, probably became very well known in New Zealand because of his association with Tom Walkinshaw, but in fact a very, very professional driver in his own right. And Graham Balkett, who will be with him. This, by the way, is the car of Paul Torkler and John Schoen, which appears to have some engine trouble. It's one that you knew a little about too, David. A young pairing of drivers from Auckland who dug up every penny basically to get here, haven't they?
Exactly. Like I said, Tony, I feel like it's probably the equivalent budget of saying that, well, the BMW team spent $10 million. These boys have poured everything into this car in the last year, had a lot of help from the boys in Wellington, Commodores, but I hope that isn't too serious. I hope they get it back going real quick.
One of the BMW M3s, that's Ravalia and Pirro, running down on their practice lap here. Unofficial practice and no times. We'll go back to Peter Williams for a moment and thence to racing.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, we must leave the Wellington waterfront for a short time, but somewhat ironical, isn't it? Here in Wellington, the capital of New Zealand, it appears as if no New Zealander has a chance of winning this big motor race. Meanwhile, across the Tasman, some New Zealand horses have a very good chance of winning the biggest weight for age race in Australasia, the WS Cox Plate. Let's go back now to Keith Quinn in the studio at Avalon. Timed practice, but you can bet your turbocharger that the stopwatches will be out, and the team camps and the commentators, the other media and other observers will certainly be looking to see which car is the fastest in this first day of practice. Let's go to our commentary team now, headed by Tony Palmer, with David Oxton, Brian Lawrence and Lou McKinnon. And Tony, perhaps a bit of a surprise with the fastest car on the track at the moment.
Sure are, Pete. I'm in danger of eating my words here very quickly. Early days yet, of course, but the fastest time registered so far is by Win Percy. 130.77, which is an average speed of 127.31 kilometres an hour. And while we're on the subject of Percy and the Commodores, the new Commodore, the L, let's just have a look at what makes it tick in terms of specifications with Neil Crompton.
They call Bathurst Commodore territory for good reason. Any car with loads of grunt or torque that can pull strongly up the hill has a major advantage. The Holden Commodore has always been strong on the mountain for that reason, and the two key areas of performance that needed to be exploited were power and aerodynamics. The new car has more horsepower and torque as a result of the fuel injection and computer engine management. It's the heaviest vehicle of the major four contenders, however, it's always handled and stopped well at the mount. Holden's engineers believe the giant leap forward in aerodynamics has greatly contributed to the car's performance. In fact, the improvements are quoted as 1/3 engine, 2/3 aerodynamics. And if there's a track in the world where aerodynamics count, it's this one.
And the car number 2, Win Percy and Graham Bowkett, the quickest qualifiers so far. Of course, it is, as Peter has explained to you, unofficial and untimed, but of course there are stopwatches everywhere. All of the times that we do give you will be unofficial. Nothing really counts in terms of times until tomorrow. This is just a little psyching out and a little setting up for who's likely to do what. Perkins and Holm in this car, number 10. They've had a 1:33.30, which is an average speed of 123.85 kilometres an hour. The second fastest qualifiers, though, to date, have been Miedecke and Soper, with, we understand, Andrew Miedecke driving in a 1:31.05, so a second slower than Percy Bowkett car. That's the Perkins and Holm car number 10. Jenny Holm and Larry Perkins, the excellent driving combination. Perkins's cars, in fact, have proved to be equally as good, if not slightly better, than Tom Walkinshaw's similar models. And both of the ones here are Larry Perkins cars. The only Tom Walkinshaw element is perhaps the aerodynamic bits and pieces on the side. There's the second fastest car so far, again unofficially, at 1:31.05. That's 1:26.91. And it is obviously the Sierras that we expect will get much quicker tomorrow. The Sierras and the BMWs. And I wonder, Brian Lawrence, if anybody's going to pick anyone other than Dick Johnson at this early stage, just on the basis of recent form.
Well, I think when you look at the pairing of Andrew Miedecke and Steve Soper, it is a very, very strong one. And of course, not forgetting the Armin Hana, Robbie Francevic pairing in a similar Cosworth RS 500. Miedecke's career is a very checkered one. He arrived last year at Bathurst, as you remember, as the man most likely to succeed. He put in a tremendous performance, but unfortunately he's had a lot of mechanical problems with the car, which is prepared by New Zealander Ross Stone. That's the car number 8 right there at the moment. That's the Andrew Bagnall car, which is being driven by Pierre Dudonné, who of course made his name with the Texaco Cosworth here last year. But I think Miedecke could pull one out of the bag. Let's hope that they've got their reliability problems under control. The pairing of Bagnall and Dudonné, it's one of, with due respect, there is a wide variety of experience between these two drivers. And of course, as Denny Holm said earlier on today, is to plod on throughout the 500 kilometres on Monday afternoon around the very, very tortuous circuit here at Wellington. It's a very, very vital factor, as well as the reliability of the car.
As we said, going very, very quickly early on, Andrew Miedecke and Steve Soper, an interesting combination, that Steve Soper having been a professional and driven with the very best of teams, and Andrew Miedecke's team has always been a relatively low-budget exercise. But Soper saw Miedecke drive last year at Bathurst and again this year, and obviously respected the outright driving ability and has teamed up with him. We spoke to Steve Soper a little earlier on about that and his chances. Steve Soper, with the apparent demise of the ETC, is this looking like the sort of thing that's going to be a lasting memory for you?
Yeah, it could be. It could be out of a job when I get back home. I don't actually know what's on the horizon for next year, so a little bit nervous.
What does it mean to you to be racing in this part of the world, like in Bathurst or Wellington?
Yeah, I enjoy coming over here very much. Bathurst and this race is they're totally different. Both races are very enjoyable. They got a lot of credibility, and I'd like to win them.
Obviously, your success last year in Sierra must have taught you that a Sierra is the car to be in here. Do you see a real challenge from the BMWs?
I think that if we make a mistake, then they'll be right there, but I can't see them out pacing us on this circuit. No, I don't think so. I think if we we get caught with an incident or a mistake like I had last year, then a well-run BMW will obviously be right on our heels, ready to sort of take the pace. But
we've seen already that the Dick Johnsons here seem to be those that are the pace setters. What sort of a race will suit you in terms of them having perhaps a little extra pace?
Well, I don't think the guy who leads for the first 20 laps will probably be leading at the end of the race. I think the guy who can just run and conservatively but quickly and stay out of the pits will win the race.
How did you end up co-driving with Andrew Miedecke?
Well, basically, after Bathurst last year, we spoke, and then it was apparent that Eggenberger and the works cars wouldn't come out to do Bathurst, and we spoke again, and he offered me to drive with him.
He's a man who came up through single-seaters. You know, they're not highly respected in Australia unless you drive a touring car, you're nobody. You obviously saw some talent there.
Yeah, I think he's a very, very good driver. He gave me a fair amount of hard time at Bathurst, and we raced together, and he looked at me from behind the steering wheel, and I looked at him. So I think if we have a bit better luck here than we had at Bathurst, we could be a threat for the race.
Steve, how much is last year's experience on this circuit going to help you here?
Yeah, I think it's obviously, I don't think it's particularly difficult to learn, but it's very bumpy, and it's a very physical circuit. I think you have to be fairly fit. And I think, yes, we have got an advantage. That the fact that I've been here, this is my third year actually, so I've been here in January 87, October 87, and again now. So I think it's definitely going to help, yeah.
Steve Soper, and there's the car that he'll be driving in the big race, the Nissan Mobil 500 on Monday afternoon. The race starts at 1:15. We'll return with more from a practice day here on Saturday, Labor Day Saturday, from the Wellington waterfront very soon, including a talk with the race favourite, Dick Johnson. Fastest touring car in the world at the moment, that's Dick Johnson. Welcome back to Wellington, Dick.
Thanks, Peter.
All keen and all set to go on Monday?
Certainly am, yeah. It's going to be
car going to last the distance?
Well, I hope so. Everything's going just fine up till now, and what we've got to do is hope a little bit of luck to go our way, I'd say.
You had 3 cars at Bathurst. You needed 3 to complete the 1,000 kilometres over there. You content and certainly be able to do 500 here with just the 1 car?
Well, I sincerely hope so. It's a fairly difficult race to win, just as Bathurst is. You know, Bathurst is a very difficult race to win. And when you put in an effort that we put in, I suppose, and all the dramas that we went through in the lead up to the race, which certainly hampered our preparation, I think we were damn lucky to finish where we did.
All right, Dick, let's now go through or around the Wellington Street circuit here. We had a camera in your Ford Sierra the other day. If you could just take us around the circuit now as we look out through the windscreen.
Well, this is just after you come out of the pits, out of pit lane, and this is the first gear corner for us. It's completely a hairpin corner. It's very tight, first up to second. And it runs about 8.4, 8.5 in second there. You're hard on the brakes, and this is a very difficult part of the circuit. You've got to get this fairly right because your speed down the straight really depends on how you get through that corner. And this is just a bit of a chicane which you go through flat out, and you're in fifth gear here and runs to about 8,300, and you're hard on the brakes and go all the way back through down to second gear through this left-right combination. Where the turbos suffer is here because they don't come on the boost so hard. Now this is the bumpiest part of the circuit here. The car absolutely leaps off the road. You get up to fifth gear and then back into second for this corner. You stay in second for this left-right combination, and also back off the main streets onto the wharf again through this another hairpin, but it's a much wider radius in the bottom corner. Second gear, up to third gear, and the car's wheel spinning all the way up here. Hard on the brakes, back into second, and get on the gas now, otherwise the boost doesn't come on, and you end up with somebody like this in front of you. Can be a bit of a worry sometimes. Yeah, that's Win Percy. I think you've had a bit of a moment, and you're not really going to go past anyone around here because it gets a bit dodgy. And this is where you can pick up a lot of time coming onto the bridge. And the left-hander and right-hander back onto pit straight. And you get up to fifth gear along here, and I suppose you're doing about 135 miles an hour by the time you go back to fourth for this corner here. And here we are back in the same spot again, and you're all the way back down to first gear. So now you're working fairly hard for the entire lap.
Has the surface of the track changed noticeably in the last 12 months at all, Dick, from your memory?
Well, I think either the cars are obviously going a little bit faster, or the the bumps are getting bigger, one of the two. But certainly down Cable Street, the bumps are very, very disconcerting. The car leaps all over the road, especially if you pass another car, because you can get backwards pretty quickly over there. It's very tricky braking heavily in those sort of conditions, because you lock up wheels, and once you lock a wheel up, you lose all adhesion on the road, and basically you can't steer the car. So this is why you see a lot of cars that end up straight into the arm car at the end of a braking unit, especially down here. This is really, really difficult.
Dick, what are the Shell Ultra pit crew telling you at the moment as far as times are concerned? They've got the stopwatches out, obviously. What's yourself and John Bowe doing around the track?
We're down to 31.2s or something like that, which is more than competitive, especially with the tyres we have on the car. I feel our car is certainly good enough to do mid-28 around here with the right sort of tyres on it. And this is all a big psych, I think, coming up to race day. And especially qualifying, where these guys get out there and they put soft tyres on, and they do about 3 laps at a time, because on the 4th lap they lose about 5 seconds. So, it's all a fairly, a bit of a psych for all the other competitors, thinking, oh, we're the fastest and we're the fastest. But
right, the race isn't won over one flying lap, it's won over 4 hours. But once again, we come back to the old problem of reliability, and Dick Johnson did great in the ATC this year with races, 2 hours in duration. Here you've got to go double that. You struggled at Bathurst to last the distance, so are you certain that you're going to be able to last the 4 hours here?
Well, I feel fairly confident. The things that have gone wrong with the car haven't been major things, they've been stupid little things. And as I say, how can anyone gauge when they're going to get a puncture, for heaven's sake? And that's basically what happened to my car at Bathurst. The second car that John was driving, it cracked the piston, for the simple reason that we spent a day and a night in the scrutineering bay trying to sort out some eligibility problems with the cars that have been protested against us. And that sort of left us in a situation where we didn't have time to change an engine in that car. So the poor old engine's done 4,000 kilometres. It's the one that did Silverstone and everything else, so it's done a lot of work. And the problems that we did have certainly were provoked more so than mistakes that were made by us.
Dick Johnson, thanks for joining us for the moment anyway. No doubt we'll hear and see plenty more of you over the next couple of days. Dick Johnson, race favourite in the Shell Ultra Ford Sierra Cosworth RS 500. We're back at the Wellington waterfront in just a moment. Second unofficial and untimed practice session for the Group A cars as we prepare for the 1988 version of the Nissan Mobil 500. Let's now rejoin our commentary team as they look at this Schnitzer BMW of Roberto Ravaglia and Emmanuel Pirot.
Thanks, Peter. Well, it's changing all the time, and as we've said several times, time's unofficial, but a good guide early on as to who's got onto the pace fairly quickly. And Dave Oxton changing again.
Yes, Tony. Well, that's a bit of the psyching, as we heard from Dick before. The psyching's on. I wouldn't think the real pace is on, but it's really good to see there's a couple of Holdens up there, because a few people have written them off. Now, there's the Larry Perkins entry there. And there's a lot of Australians that think that these cars are better than the Tom Walkinshaw cars created and built in England for Holden special vehicles. So anyway, rewarding sight for Larry and the boys to get that car going real well. But of course there's an inter-country rivalry, because the fastest Holden at the moment is Win Percy, fastest overall, 30.77. And that's built up by the Roadways team. It's a bright blue and white coloured car, running with Graham Balkett from Auckland, and that car is built up by Les Small in Australia, well known for running Alan Grice for many years. Just turning into the pit road right now. It's a VL Commodore, very distinctive. That's the new fuel-injected VL SS Commodore, and well, certainly I'm sure Graham Balkett's real pleased with his effort. So just running quickly through the top 6 at the moment. Win Percy 30.77, John Bowe 30.87. This of course 1 minute in front of us, 1 minute 30.87. Soper 1 minute 31.05. Emmanuel Pirot 131.54. Pierre Dudonné 132.55. That's a little Sierra of the Gulliver's Travel entry. And 132.83 the time for Jeff Allam in the second Holden Special Vehicles car. But here's Win Percy into some heavy chat, getting a bit of a debrief. Is it Win Percy or is it Graham, in fact? Les Small.
It's Graham Balkett, actually, Dave.
Okay,
I just wonder, picking those times, what are they going to come down to tomorrow?
Well, we heard Dick mention 128. I guess it's possible. I mean, They traditionally wind up the boost and use a softer tyre. Dick's team don't go for a quali anymore because, in fact, it doesn't seem to work. So much horsepower in these Sierras and these Holdens that it just doesn't seem to work using this soft qualifying tyre. So they just run a soft race tyre, which is probably pretty good for a very cold day, and certainly we'll look for probably 28s from the Sierras, but I wouldn't think that 29s will probably be a real good time for a Commodore.
Don't panic too much at the shot of Dick Johnson's car being pushed back into the pits there. It's not a problem. I think they're just putting it away, happy with the day's work. And while we're on the subject of Sierras, let's have a look at some of the specifications of the current model RS 500 Cosworth Sierra with, again, Neil Crompton.
Explaining the power of the Ford is tough, but the RS 500 Cosworth version of the Sierra is a fast weapon. To help your understanding of how much power it has, imagine a car with 7 times the power of your basic Nissan Pulsar, or over twice as much power as Tom Selleck's Ferrari. Powered by a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, the twin-cam 16-valve power plant turns this fast touring car into a fire breather. With big brakes and a well-balanced chassis, this package is the most formidable bar none. Turbocharging enabled Ford's engineers to keep the weight down using a tiny engine, and they've generated the kind of horsepower seen not so long ago in Formula One cars.
An interesting specification there in 485 horsepower. As I understand it, it's not difficult to get 500 or slightly better out of these with a little adjustment to the boost. And we're also told that in sports sedan form, if you like to run them in sports sedans and did away with the Group A regs, you could actually make 620 horsepower out of one of these engines, which is absolutely phenomenal. And on current specs, I think, Dave, if one were entered, as has been proposed in sports sedans, it would actually blow the wheels off most of the sports sedans in the country.
Well, there is a rumour down on pit road, especially from the Australians, that these cars, these little Ford Sierras, will be running nearly 600 horsepower during next year in the Touring Car Championship. So that's incredible power from these cars. Pierre Dieudonné in your screen now talking with his, that's Alan Jones, former world champion in the Caltex car. That's an unusual driving suit. We're so used to seeing Alan in the Williams Formula One suit.
Talking there with the co-driver, and this is another entry. Colin Bond is the co-driver with Alan Jones, and it's another entry that is sort of borderline for being competitive. Certainly it's a Sierra, but there is a great deal of difference here between some Sierras and others. Not all Sierras are created equal, certainly in Group A, and a lot of that comes down to budget and some of the very small but very expensive bits that you have to bolt on these. But what a phenomenal motor this has become, and what excellent use it's getting in Group A.
The key of these cars, though, Tony, is this thing called the brain, the little computer control unit which feeds the electricity to the engine and controls the fuel supply. And it's this mixture, this blend of spark and fuel running through the rev range which controls the power. And these guys are working night and day to come up with the perfect chip to make these engines go powerfully strong but reliable and fuel efficient.
Colin Bond, a very experienced driver. Alan Jones also, of course, well known to the world at large of motor racing, but not that experienced in touring cars. And there have been many who've said along pit lane that Alan Jones doesn't take touring cars as seriously. When I spoke to him yesterday, he certainly appeared as though he was, and said that it was perhaps a little lack of knowledge of the touring car formula that was holding him back at the moment. Give you an indication of some of the costs involved and some of the reason why not all Sierras are created equal in terms of this championship. One minor thing on the back, like a suspension arm on the rear, is worth about $7,500 to get the right bit, and it's not substantially different to the substantially cheaper one that is on the previous model. So that's just one example. Like an engine management system worth about $50,000. So phenomenal costs involved, Lou, aren't there?
I think it's no coincidence also, Tony, that a lot of these teams have specialists in these engine management systems. You look at the Dick Johnson team, for example. Neil Lowe is a man who's very clever in his own right, and with a management system, he is absolutely brilliant. And we understand that he can completely reprogram the management system on this car in something like 16 to 20 minutes just to make little modifications, and can rewrite an entire program in something like 16 hours. It's just a fantastic leap, if you like, in technology.
David Oxton, you've actually done a fair amount of work just recently on engine management systems and information transfers from car to pit and back again. It's amazing what can be done and what information can be relayed. They can actually alter the tuning of these cars from the pits very shortly.
It's called telemetry, Tony. Obviously, it's done in Formula One. But yes, the technology is being developed now whereby mechanics or engineers will be able to control these cars from the pit road, literally, because they know exactly what the car is doing, because the messages are being sent from the car. But up until now, it hasn't been possible to say exactly where on the circuit these things are happening. Now, with the New Zealand technology that's being developed, I see this system being available very, very soon.
High tech coming to Group A. Let's take a look at the unofficial, very unofficial times in the unofficial and untimed practice this afternoon for the Group A cars. These are the fastest four that we've been able to ascertain. Win Percy in the Holden Commodore VL, 130.77. Bo in the Dick Johnson car, the number 17 Red Ford Sierra, 130.87. Steve Soper in another Sierra, and Emmanuel Pirot in the Roberto Revalia Schnitzer BMW M3, 131.54. Look for those times to be reduced by a couple of seconds at least tomorrow during official qualifying. Let's take a look at what is on the program for you tomorrow. We're back with you live at the Wellington waterfront at 25 minutes to 4. You'll see action in the Bridgestone Porsche Cup Series, also the sports sedans, and the final qualifying round. The cars are back on the track. The Group A cars are back on the track.